Hi friends, hi family, welcome back to my channel. My name is Uko M and I do career and lifestyle content. Today we are giving tips to all the new people who are starting a new job, those who will be starting their articles. If you just wrote your board exam in 2025 and you are entering the employment market, you are entering the corporate era, congrats on making this far. I'm so proud of you, and I just want to share tips and like tricks or things that I wish I had known before starting my articles. And I just also want to talk about things that I think you should be on the lookout for, and just how to make your first year of experience better. I did my first year of articles in 2023, September up until 2024 September. I am currently a second year, like I'm a senior. I'm doing my second year of articles, psych articles, training to be a chartered accountant. I believe that this video or these tips will actually be applicable to anyone who's starting a new job, but I'll obviously be more specific to people who are psych trainees, which I believe is a really good first year exposure to a company. Very tricky but very insightful. And I'll also share my experience of how was first year of articles like, and what I wish I had done better, and how does it feel like now being a senior in TOPP articles. As you all know, I am doing my articles in the private sector, so I am not in auditing. This is private sector. So yeah, first things first, what I think you obviously need stationery. I think the first thing is have stationery. What could be a stationery? You don't need the elaborate like stationery things, just like 2 or 3 things. You need a notebook, you need this small book. I only bought this small book like this year in my second year because I didn't think it would be important as much as I realized it was important. Have a highlighter and have a pen. With this stationery in your first year job, you are enough. You might have to restock this quite a lot if you are a writer. If you're someone who takes notes during training, you might need this more often than not. But if not, you are good at retaining, then maybe not. So first thing is stationery. That's the main thing that you need. And secondly, you need to establish a routine in your corporate job. Figure out what do you like to do. For example, my routine was waking up at 5 a.m. every day. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. Have a session to myself where I just pray and I read my Bible. Then after that, I go to gym, or sometimes I would look at my job in the morning between 5:30 and 6:30, and then just to have an idea what's the day gonna look like, or finish up on something that I'm not done with. And then 6:30 to 7, I'm exercising or I'm at the gym, or sometimes until 7:30, depending if I'm working from home or I'm working at the office. And then after that, I take a shower every day and start working afterwards. So having a routine gave me a bit of balance around my life, and I felt like there was a schedule on what should happen and what should not happen. And in having a routine, be very strict about it. Don't take calls at certain time, like after 7 p.m. I always tried to ignore taking calls from teams, even if I was working. And within my routine, I would work from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. up until 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. depending on days. Some days I would work starting from 7 a.m. up until 4:30. Our routine, my routine was very flexible. It depended on the day and how things were looking. And that was it. That was the routine. So you need stationery, have a routine, establish a working routine. I'm a lunchbox girl, so you need to decide whether you take lunch or you buy from the cafeteria. Most days I was carrying lunch, and some days I'd buy if it's necessary. Be diligent. As a first year trainee, it's so hard to know exactly what's expected of you, but please be diligent in whatever you're doing, in whatever task you are given. try to practice diligence and just be critical of whatever you are doing as a first year. Managers or seniors seem to be very attentive to those things. I did not think they would be that attentive. They're even attentive even on the small things. Like, let's say if you get asked to print papers, print those papers diligently. Like, I remember in my first day we were asked to print financial statements, and I had printed the financial statements incorrectly and I left them on the printer, and that was not good. I was not being diligent enough, because we're not supposed to leave like financial statements to the public to be viewed until they're like publicized or something like along those lines. So that's something I did that I didn't know that it was not allowed. I was just not diligent in that situation. So I think be diligent in anything and everything that you do at work. Carry yourself very well, even in the corridors. Dress up in a smart way. Obviously, we know the dress code for corporate, but carry yourself in a good manner. Whoever you meet on the passageway, please greet them. Greet, like, say morning, good afternoon, how are you? And speak louder. Like, it's so tricky, like being a first year, because you are very shy, you're a bit scared because you don't know anyone in the office and you don't know what to expect. How will people treat you? But what I've noticed is that people notice you. People notice you even if you think they are not noticing. This one time the head of HR called my name and I was so shocked. How did he know my name? But yeah, he knew my name and he was just asking me questions. Which church do I go to? Who am I? And all of that. It was like very like relaxed and friendly. But interestingly, he knew me. So just carry yourself very well, even in the corridors. Like, even if you don't work with the people, talk to them. Like, just greet, good morning, good afternoon, hi, smile, just be good. And then be willing to work. You are there to work, obviously. Be willing to work. Like, you are first year trainee, and the first few months, the company doesn't yet know where to place you, or they're still like figuring out a structure on where to place you, what to do with you, especially like in top companies where there isn't like a very like prescriptive structure of what's going to happen and how things will run. So the first few months are very like you're flowing across departments. You are not yet allocated to your specific department, or there's no work that's allocated to you because you are not that yet resourceful. So just be willing to work, ask questions, roam around the office, don't leave immediately after 4 p.m. Just be willing to work, like show some interest. Read about the company, read about the company structure, what do they do during the time where you are not yet allocated. Try to have an understanding what the company does. This was actually one of the tasks that my manager gave us. She was just like, let's read the financial statements. We were reading the company's financial statements on a daily basis for like 2 weeks, and it was also one of our submissions at a later stage that I was not even aware of. So be willing to work, do the work diligently. I wish I had done that 2 weeks of working, of like reading the financial statements very diligently, because even after spending like so many few days reading the financial statements, I still felt like I did not fully understand the company until I started working. So I don't know whether maybe I could have read it better, or I could have started asking critical questions to understand the financial statements. So just be willing to work. Take that as work, even though you can tell that it's not real work, but take it as work. Go through the growing pains. The one thing about being a new employee is that you're not gonna know what you're supposed to do. Please be willing to go through the growing pains. Be comfortable in the uncomfortable. It's gonna be uncomfortable like for the next 2 months, January until like maybe March. You'll feel uncomfortable. You won't really know what to expect. You don't know like what's expected of you. You don't know whether like you can engage to what extent with your colleagues, with your manager. So just be comfortable. during that uncomfortability. And as you go through training, it's not going to make sense, but please try to go through the growing pains with a bit of positivity. It's not easy because you're so used to knowing what's expected of you. Like at varsity, they tell you everything. Like, you know how the semester is gonna start and how things will go. But in corporate, they kind of make you linger. Like, you're just lingering on the passage. There's no one who's giving you like a detailed explanation of how's the corporate culture, how are things done here. You kind of have to figure them out yourselves. So these will be the growing pains that you're gonna go through. And in the process of going through your growing pains, please remember that this is not university. You are not going to be graded. There is no test to be written at the end. So be willing to judge characters, be willing to discern in your own, be willing to just be your best, but also without putting any borders around yourself, because it gets tricky to find your people, to find your fit in a company. As you're going through the growing pains, the 2 months you'll be a bit confused, as I've said, but have the ability to retain information. You're going to be told a lot of information. You're going to be told a lot of things. Please have a structure or a way to retain information. What helped in my first year, I was writing everything down, because I just felt like it was just information overload. I was being told so many things by everyone all at once, and I'm here to say that one way or the other, have a structure or a system on how you will retain that information, because later in the year, the seniors or your managers who are talking to you, they will tell you that they once told you this at the beginning of the year. They will be like, remember this, remember that, remember that. And because it was so many things all at once, you're probably not going to remember. So just have a book that you can always go back to the information that you've kept. Or if your memory is good, then try not to forget and remember everything. And I would even say that as a good way to retain your information, maybe type your weekly summary of what you've done, what you learned, how you did it, and all of that, and then you keep it as a folder in your laptop. That can work really well. I did do that at some point. My other tip is, please complete the tasks that are being assigned to you. This is tricky. It's going to be hard to master this, but as part of being a trainee or in your first time job, you need to find a way to complete the tasks that are assigned to you, because it never gets better. You are constantly being given more work, so rather complete your task as you go, quicker than not. So if someone tries to give you more tasks before you've completed the previous task, make sure you complete the previous one and then you start working on the next one. Because the thing is, they will come back at you like after 3 tasks being assigned to you, or even like 5 tasks, they come back and they ask you about task 1. Like, okay, can you please give me feedback on task 1? But because you've been like doing all the different tasks as they come along on your table without completing the first one, you kind of get carried away without completing the first task, and your manager will come back and ask you about task 1, which you haven't completed. So complete your task, do your task as you get them. Even if they don't ask feedback on it, but make sure you complete your task. And last thing but not least, these are your colleagues. Even your manager is your colleague. Find a structure of how the company works in terms of relatability or being able to socialize with your colleagues. If you are like person of color, it can be very complex to decide whether do you call people by their names or do you call people by like their do you become respectful, like you say dada or mama. The default is always call people by their names in corporate, as disrespectful as it can sound in an African culture. But these people are your colleagues, and in the future you might have to lead them, you might have to be their manager. You need to be at a position where you are able to lead them, you've created a healthy environment. So define or try to find a way of how the company functions in terms of relatability, but most companies, they call all the employees by their names. Do that, and rather, if you are not comfortable, maybe refer to people as Mr. Who and Miss, or instead of saying Dada and Mama. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but this is also a big thing because it had happened before in my previous job, not in my psycha articles. I was trying to call people Mama, Sisi, Dada, and we ended up getting in a like small conflict with one of my colleagues, and one of my senior colleagues was just like, just stop calling them with those names, because now you are struggling to exert power and establish your leadership position, because now you are their senior. It's just hard for you to go through that phase of like being a manager, because when you started you were a junior, but because of like the journey of your career, you are meant to be a manager, or you will become a manager or like a leader for people who are doing their psycha articles. So the first thing is just call people by who they are referred to, or if you are not comfortable, maybe you can ask people how do they want to be referred. Because I work with other African countries, I've noticed that in Nigeria, we actually don't call the seniors like by their names. We call them sir. Well, the men are called sir or Mr., and the women are called Miss or Mrs. All people are respected in Nigeria, whereas in Angola, you have to refer to them with their names. They don't use titles, and I had to learn this during my first year of articles, whereas in South Africa we call everyone with their nicknames or their preferred name, because the company would actually ask you like, what's your preferred name, how do you want to be called, and it was well introduced to us, whereas in other African countries this was not properly introduced, so you just kind of had to like learn how other colleagues like relating to each other. But most importantly, don't forget that these are your colleagues, and you kind of have to have a healthy boundary, a healthy social relation towards them, and don't be too over familiar, but at the same time don't be too disrespectful. There has to be like a healthy boundary. You figure it out. Different companies work differently. It's not going to be the same across all companies, but you will figure it out. And those are my tips for those who will be starting their first jobs, or if you're joining like corporate for the first time. When it comes to the work of the company, you will honestly get better with time. You're not gonna know everything, like it's impossible, and you're gonna need to extend grace to yourself, unless you are extremely smart, or you have like a really good community behind you who have experience working in the company. It might be a bit better, but what I've noticed is that I've worked at a big four firm, and it was a bit easier to have an idea what's happening, because I knew more people who once worked for the company, whereas working in a top private sector, no one really knows how the company functions. So I didn't have people who I could ask questions from. I literally had to figure it out myself, and that meant having like an extra hour a day, extra 30 minutes, just going through on what is the company system, what's the company function like. And yeah, those are my tips and tricks. If you're a first year working or first year trainee, please be on the lookout for those things and implement one of them. Just try it out and see how it works. And now let me share my experience as a psycha trainee in a top company. How was it? Oh, it has been a great experience. Very challenging, a lot of work. I don't have a lived full experience of being in a big four firm, so I can't really talk a lot on it. But with the little experience that I've received, that I've like seen or I've had, because I once worked for like 2 months at a big four firm, and then I left. It was just like vacation work. I would say that private sector, you have to figure it out. Like, as much as like we know IFRS, I knew accounting, the company applies IFRS and accounting a bit differently. The principle is still the same, but the application is different. This was very uncomfortable to me, because I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I trying to do? What are we like trying to get to? And they'll tell you that, yeah, this is the first 16, but they do it like this. And eventually, like at the end of the year, the building blocks started making sense. By the time it was the end of the year, all the small things that I did started making sense. So I think for me, it really took long to get the full picture, which is why one of my tips is go through the growing pains. The other thing is that being in a top private sector, they're rotating into different departments. It's tiring because the moment I'm grasping or trying to understand what this function does, I actually have to rotate. Like when I start being comfortable, I'm changing to a new department. And when I get to that new department, I also don't know how they function. And I have to go through the growing pains again. So if you are in top articles, the company is very big. Like I know that like companies like insurances, they would have like different departments that do completely different things. Even in us at work, we have like we have different departments that do completely different things, but they all like meet up to one thing. So you go through the growing pains that I went through were really tough. Even to this day, I still struggle with them, but with experience, I've gotten used to the pain. Like I'm like, okay, this is it. We're learning. I don't know what I'm doing, but sure, it gets better after like a week or two now, instead of like taking the 4 months that it took at the beginning. And the other thing is that when I started my job, it was too relaxed. Like, oh my goodness. It was too relaxed in the sense that because we joined the company in September, all my colleagues, like my senior colleagues, were so busy with like financial statements because we joined at year end. And because they're busy with financial statements, my manager would constantly tell us that she is struggling to use us because she has like hectic deadlines and she can't train us because now they're at the final stage of doing the financials. There was no one to train us basically, but rather we had to figure it out, and at the same time it was not as busy, whereas we went from being not busy to being extremely busy. The jump from not having much to having too much, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. So that was my experience of my articles. But when it comes to people, the people were amazing. God has blessed me with amazing colleagues. My colleagues are incredible. My manager is very like loving, nurturing. She's a good woman, and I love her. Like I really love my managers. I have like 2 managers who are females and black females, and I enjoy them so much. They're so loving and caring, and they really nurture the environment. But oh my goodness, when it's time to work, we work. Yeah. When it's time to work, we work. Yeah. Those are my big highlights of my working experience as a first year trainee. And the other big thing is the work is complex. My manager says this, that our company has one of the most complex accounting systems, in a sense that the application of the IFRS is quite complex. So the complexity is not because of the accounting per se. It's not like because we don't know accounting, but rather it's because of how the accounting is applied. And we report directly to Germany on a monthly basis, which makes things a bit harder. Whereas with other companies, each group would have its own way of doing things, and then they consolidate like manually. Whereas with us, we have like an automatic type of consolidation, which was frustrating, to be honest. As a first year, I wasn't used to it. No one at university told me about transaction types. No one told me about the importance of profit centers. But in my first year of articles, I had to learn that very quickly, because you're gonna get errors in your journals. If you post a journal and it's not to the right profit center, it's not with the right transaction types. Assets have their own transaction types. Like, it's such an interesting, it's a beautiful system, but it can be very like shocking to someone who's coming from varsity, and it was shocking to me. But obviously you get used to it as it goes. The other thing, my experience about like being a psych trainee first year, is that people are going to ask you questions. People will expect you to know much more than you think you do. You need to have high confidence. Like, you need to know your work really well, because you will be asked questions by your other colleagues who are seniors, but they're not necessarily like CAs, or they don't work under your direct managers, but they know your manager's department to be the people who know the work. So because they are known as the people who know the work, you also have to know the work. And the other loving thing that I really liked about my company was that the people are really nice. You get to ask people, like, you can get to ask anyone. So ask quicker. That was my big experience or learning curve, is that the quicker I ask, the better. Sometimes, like, I would have to do like admin work, like GRing invoices and all of that, and there would be no one available in my team to teach me how to do this, because everyone is busy with their own work. And I'd literally just ask a random person who's working in a different department to please help me with this function. So be willing to ask. That was one of my big work experiences, especially now in my current department, because my current department works in projects, and it's tricky, it's a lot, it's very complex, and it's complicated in the sense of how the teams work. They don't work necessarily how my direct department works. So I think that's what makes psycho articles harder and challenging, is that you have to meet with so many different people, and you don't always get to be with the people that you're most comfortable with, but that's life, And one of my other experience stories is that I was not learning quicker. I think I was a bit complacent because of how we started our articles. Like the 2 months, 3 months of us not being busy, they made me too relaxed. And I was not learning quicker, and I was constantly asking stupid questions, if I'm being honest, because I was not retaining the information quickly, which is why it's important to have a notebook. But in overall, I was constantly willing to rectify my mistakes. I think so. I think I was listening when I'm being told that, remember I told you this. I would be like, oh snap, you are correct. You really told me this. And my senior was very patient. She was very patient. Oh my goodness. She was very patient, and yeah. So the other thing is that I already said that I had good colleagues. My colleagues are very understanding people. They're loving, nice people. And the nice thing I like about my colleagues, my seniors, is that they will tell you quickly when you're doing something wrong. They'll tell you, you are not listening. Like my senior would tell me, I told you this, why must I repeat myself? But she will eventually repeat herself, but she should be very straightforward when she's not happy with me not remembering things, or not learning as quickly as possible. And as such, in one of my feedbacks, she was like to me that you are good as an employee, but you could be so much better. It's just that you constantly not keeping up. Yeah, and that is because our working environment moves very quickly. We are moving very quickly, and there is just so much work. It's actually so overwhelming. And I think my personal feedback to myself about myself for first year articles, I think I did really well. I did really well in the sense that I understand what I'm doing now, whereas at the beginning I didn't understand what I was doing. I was constantly confused. I've taken the time to explain to myself, to try to understand the work, and I really do understand it now, and I have a better working function and system, which is great. One of the big things that I think people might ask is, how was it being a trainee after you have failed? I ask myself that question quite a lot. Well, how was it? It was not easy. It was small imposter syndrome there and there, but my manager is such an affirming woman. She would constantly tell us that the work is hard. She would say it. She'd be like, the work is hard. You're not gonna know it, but you guys are capable. So I constantly reminded myself that I am capable, and I just knew that I can't slack. So I would constantly push myself. And I would give myself confidence, like confidence booster. You're gonna need it in corporate. You need to boost your own confidence, because sometimes there are gonna be mistakes, and as I told you, it's not the accounting, it's the company system. So those are just the things that you must be on the lookout for. Constantly boost yourself, give yourself the confidence that you need, but obviously try your best to do the work really well, as diligently as possible. However, remember that you are a trainee at the end of the day. You are there to learn, you are there to grow and develop to be a CA. You are not yet a CA, and you don't have the experience that comes with wisdom, that comes with the resilience that the job needs, and the job will need you to be resilient. You are actually only developing resilience now. This is your first year of developing that resilience of being in corporate. So you'll be fine, you'll be fine. All the best to everyone who's starting a new job. I wish you like great colleagues. I wish you all gonna get understanding people in your team, people who are willing to work with you, hold your hand as you learn how to be a corporate, like how to be in corporate, and just how to be well integrated in this space. It's gonna take time, but give yourself the grace and always strive to be the best, to be the best candidate possible. And yeah, that is my experience. I wish you guys all the best with your new jobs. Comment below if you have any questions, or if you'd like to know more information. This would be very easy if like I had like a Q&A, then I'd be able to ask questions. So if you guys would like us to do like a Q&A, maybe we can do a Q&A, but I'm open to anything. For now, I just shared what I remembered about my job and my experience. Oh, the other nice thing about my experience is that I got to travel. And even now they're planning for our third year senior to travel to Portugal, which is amazing. So to get to travel as a trainee is something that most companies no longer do, but luckily our company still does it. Our company actually has really amazing people. It's just that the job is hard, as expected. The job will always be hard, but I think having good people makes the job a bit easier, well, a bit tolerable and a bit manageable. So yeah, that is my first year experience, and those are my tips on how to navigate the working space. If you have any questions, please comment below, and please subscribe to my channel. Share this video to anyone who you know who's starting their new job in corporate, or who is like a psych trainee, first year psych trainees. I wish you guys all the best with all the LORs that you are about to do, because those things have been challenging to balance them. Like balancing psych requirements and your job requirements, it's a tough one, but you'll get through it. You have to get through it. And that's it. Thank you so much. Please subscribe, please share the video. Bye.